Just two quick ideas, and I'd love to hear your reactions. One relates to inequality. One way of thinking about family structure is that family structure is the site of inequality. You see this in terms of kids having summer learning loss or whatever else, the amount of vocabulary you're exposed to, et cetera. So two mental models leap immediately to mind. When you think about the crack epidemic, one story people tell is that younger brothers saw older brothers and they decided, you know what, crack isn't for me for that reason, and it's a kind of learning process rather than something that the state does in terms of disciplining and nurturing. Another idea is that you have a society, traditional societies that are very kinship-oriented, and the people who regulate you, who watch you, who shame you, are other family members, whereas in a kind of more modern society, a more urban society, that's much less true. And so then you have this tension in which the goal of the state in mitigating inequality is actually to mitigate those disciplining functions of these kinship groups, whereas in a way that actually might undermine. So in a way, when you're talking about women and men, if women have more earning power, if they also have other resources and institutions that will come to their aid, then clearly men are going to seem less desirable, even if actually men were exactly the same as they were 40 years ago. So that's just kind of one thought and how we tease this out, because no one is talking about going back to a Dickensian era. So then how do you reconcile that? The other thing with regard to an observation David had made about getting married at 30, et cetera, is that in these kind of college-educated communities, et cetera, one pattern you often see, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that women feel as though they have to actually achieve some degree of career success as a stable base before they have children, so that later on, having achieved this kind of capital, you can actually return to it more or less on your terms, even if you pull away for some period of time. Now, obviously, that's extremely difficult to do on this very compressed schedule, whereas men, in contrast, might feel as though they have this greater freedom. So that seems to be something that's creating a big pressure and tension, just even in terms of just basic stress, and that also might actually deteriorate the quality of marriages. But I wonder if that's wrong or what your intuitions are.
On the latter point, I think that's one of the, those two legal scholars have written the Red State, Blue State book. Naomi Kahn. I mean, they acknowledge one of the limitations of the Blue State model is that it has that very dilemma, is that you're kind of, yes, people are achieving all the education and professional attainment that they need to before having kids, but that does limit their time schedule for women, and it can limit them in ways that they don't achieve their ideal fertility. So that's certainly one limitation, I think, the Blue State model that they're forthright about acknowledging. On the first front, I think you're also right to sort of see that the way in which the modern state can kind of stand in the place of older kinship models in ways that are both good and bad. But I think, in terms of at a bare minimum, what I would say is that we should try to, and I think both Democrats and Republicans would agree on this, we should try to figure out ways in which we can eliminate, among other things, the marriage penalty that is built into much of our public welfare in this country still, where people who are working class or poor are less likely to qualify for some means-tested benefits when they marry as opposed to just cohabiting. And that's one economic and kind of legal signal that we're sending to them that is not conducive to marriage.
It's also interesting to me, kind of on the shame question, and there's a new movie out, Shame, which this would be interesting to explore that way, but how we like to think that we kind of have left that idea of shame behind and stigmatizing, and yet we still do it, but we just do it in different ways. So like we shame people colossally for what they eat nowadays, which is kind of bizarre to me. That's one example of shame. We certainly shame people if they have a DUI and we plaster their face on the local newspaper, and so there's lots of ways in which we still as a society choose to shame people, but and I'm not for this as a strategy particularly, but we were all very quiet and not want to hurt each other's feelings when it comes to having children out of wedlock or doing deliberately denying your child a father. We're not really supposed to talk about that. Not all of us are. Shame is not my preferred mode, but it's just interesting what we do shame and what we don't shame in our current mode.